I got another Chaos Knight painted by Den of Imagination Painting Studios, which means finally I can now field a full 2,000 point Chaos Knights army list. Previously I didn't have enough knights. So I thought I'd make a video showing the awesome paintwork from Den of Imagination Painting Studios, images flickering away in the background, and it also gives me the perfect opportunity to talk about Chaos Knights. But before I do, thank you to Den for getting this painted, awesome level 5 painting standard, fully magnetized, many options, big wow. The level of detail, the chaos symbols, it's sublime. And yes, they look nurgly and green and smelly because I asked them to make them look nurgly and green and smelly so I could mix them in with my Death Guard warband, the end of all things. And I told them not to do the bases as well because I've done the bases myself, the same as I've done the bases for the end of all things, my Death Guard. So there's ideas here, because what you can do with knights, whether you've got an Imperial Knight or a Chaos Knight, is you can slot one in to your Imperium force or your Chaos force. For Imperium factions, it's called Free Blades. Just add a knight to your Imperial Guard list, Custodies list, Space Marines list, whatever. So long as they have the Imperium keyword, you can add a Free Blade. And for Chaos Knights, just add a Dread Blade. When you add a knight to your army, it doesn't gain any of the Chaos Knight rules or the Imperial Knight rules, because your army faction will be Chaos Space Marines or will be Salamanders or will be whatever it is. So those enhancements, stratagems, faction rules just work on that particular thing. What you do is you add a knight in, and it basically just uses its data sheets, run around all over the place, causing mayhem, but mainly looking really cool. I did a battle report recently where I added a Knight Lancer to the 13th, and oh, I felt it. That was nice. I think I need to add, I think you're going to see a Chaos Knight getting added more often to my Death Guard lists, and an Imperial Knight getting added more often to my Imperial lists. It's certainly a thing that I haven't done as much as a thing that you can do. It's a thing, and I want to do the thing more. I should do the thing more, because big stompy robots of doom, they just look cool. And sometimes when you play with a whole knight army, it can feel a little oppressive, but when you just add a knight in an army, it just cool. It's cool. That's a good segue to a question though. Let me know in the comment section below if you add a knight to your army, and then what army are you adding it to, and what type of knight do you add in your army? What works, what synergizes well for you, or what just looks cool? So I've got about 4,000 points worth of Imperial Knights, which I've painted myself, and you've probably seen on the channel quite a bit, and I never had enough points to bring a full Chaos Knights army, so it seemed to be like a quick win to hit up Den of Imagination and say, hey, can I have a lovely knight please, which they obviously delivered on with the full magnetization and stuff like that. It was like add one model and suddenly I've got a whole new faction that I can play in 10th edition. And Chaos Knights though, let's talk about Chaos Knights versus Imperial Knights, because when you actually play with these things on their own, I think there's a bit of a disparity between the Imperial Knights and the Chaos Knights. Basically, the Imperial guys have got it good, and Chaos Knights can't have nice things. So Imperial Knights have the code chivalric, and they pick one of two things: lay low the tyrant and reclaim the realm. One of these things. And lay low the tyrant is they can reroll a hit roller 1 and reroll a wound roller 1 every time they're called upon to shoot or fight. And reclaim the realm is add 1 to the model's move characteristics and add 1 to advance and charge rolls for this model. You pick one or the other, and these are turned on all the time when you're pairing Imperial Knights. And there's the detachment rule that we have right now, which if you're listening to this at the time of recording, time of release, their detachment rules is they basically get 6 up, feel no pain. Then the second part of the code chivalric is if they do the deed, which is kill the enemy warlord, they get a buff. And those things get better. The 6 up, feel no pain becomes a 5 up, feel no pain. Then they get 3 CP as well. One is done, the lay low the tyrant, you get that if you kill the enemy warlord. The other one, reclaim the realm, the advance and charge thing, add 1 to your move. The faster one, you get that if you control your enemy's objective. The point being, they're both good. They're both turned on all the time. You don't have to worry about them. And 3 extra CP if you complete the thing. What's not to love? Chaos Knights, on the other hand, have Harbingers of Dread, and they have an aura called Despair, and it works for Battle Round 1 and 2. So in Battle Rounds 1 and 2, if an enemy unit is within 12 inches of that model, each time that enemy unit takes a battleshock test or leadership test, subtract 1 from that test. So it's turned on all the time, but in turn 1, how many enemy units are going to be within 12 inches of your knight? If your enemy goes second, then they're not. You're highly unlikely to get your Chaos Knights within 12 of an enemy model, and more than that, the enemy model needs to be forced to take a battleshock test, so it's got to be below half strength or below half of the wounds. And so yeah, actually getting there and making them take a battleshock test is going to be tricky. And even if they go first, are they going to run within 12 inches of you? And when are you actually going to force them to take a battleshock test? They need to be in range. Certain things need to happen. Then they need to take a battleshock test at -1, and then they might pass it. And from turn 3 onwards, each time a model makes an attack, if the target is battleshock, they add 1 to the wound roll. And each time an attack targets a model, if the attacking model is battleshocked, then they subtract 1 to the hit roll. So Imperial Knights players, they've got a lovely thing. Reroll a hit roll of 1, reroll a wound roll of 1, or move quicker. That's turned on all the time. Chaos Knight players have a thing that helps increase the likelihood of failing battleshock tests, so long as they're within 12 inches. And then from turn 3 onwards, if you're targeting a unit that's battleshocked, or a battleshock unit is targeting you, then they might get nerfed. What I'm saying is, unlike the Imperial Knights rule, there's a couple of things that need to happen for Chaos Knights players to make their thing be a thing. In the future, Chaos Knight players are going to have a couple of different detachment rules. So it's going to be interesting to see how the different detachment rules interact with the main army rule, the Harbingers of Dread thing, forcing battleshock tests and making battleshock tests actually mean something. There's going to be different interactions there. But for now, they just have one which is called Forged in Terror. In the battleshock test of your opponent's command phase, if an enemy unit that is below its starting strength is within 12 of a Chaos Knight model, that enemy unit must take a battleshock test. So basically, if you do get within 12 of Chaos Knights, you're taking battleshock tests, even if you've taken wound, or if you've wound if you're a single wound model, or if you've lost a model if you're a unit that has more than one model. But again, you've got to get within 12. That battleshock test will be at -1, but you've got to get within 12, and then they've got to fail it. And then maybe they might target something with that thing, which means that they're hitting you worse, or maybe when you shoot back at that thing, you're going to get pluses to wound it. But it's contingent on a couple of things happening. And I have to ask you, genuinely asking for a friend here, Battleshock. What do we think of Battleshock? Does it actually do the do? Does it do the do-do? Or is it just a big pile of do-do? I mean, obviously we all do what Games Workshop was going for here. If a unit's battleshocked, they have to take a desperate breakout test, which is fine because sometimes you might lose a model or two, but 9 times out of 10 you're like, well, I won't bother desperately breaking out. And the other thing that happens is you can't put a stratagem on a unit that's battleshocked, so fine. You've typically only got a couple of stratagems to spend anyway, and you might not have spent it on that unit in particular because you want to spend the CP that you've got over here to make that unit fall back and charge, or make that unit shoot better, or make that... You're losing the ability to stick a stratagem on a unit isn't that bad either. The only time that Battleshock might come into effect that actually changes the game, or the only time that it really comes into effect is those very few occasions where an enemy unit gets battleshocked and all of a sudden they can't score their objective and you do. That does happen. Doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. So I'm asking you guys, what do you think? Do you think Battleshock is a thing? Does it come into play often for you guys? And is it as significant as it would be? And if it is, fine, let me know. I'd like to hear some examples. Maybe I'm not onto anything here, but if you don't feel like Battleshock is shocking enough, what would you do to change it? What ideas have you come up with, or are there any house rules that you play when you play units that are Battleshocked? Because personally, I just don't feel that Battleshocked is as significant as Games Workshop hoped it would be. Now, the last time I asked the internet for their opinion was when I did the Tyranids Codex review, and I looked at the Endless Swarm detachment and went, meh. But that's my personal opinion, and I'm very aware that the Endless Swarm detachment just won a major somewhere in America. So it's good and stuff, and I understand that people want to play it, but I said, yeah, for my personal point of view, yeah. And then the internet let me know. The internet let me know all their opinions on all the things. So I'm very interested to get all the feedback again and hear all the opinions from all the things about battleshock. Or am I barking up the wrong Titan here? What I would like to see for Chaos Knights is something that pulls it back on par with Imperial Knights, because Imperial Knights having their 6-up feel no pain, having the reroll hit rolls of 1, reroll wounds rolls of 1, or move quicker is clearly superior in my opinion. Chaos Knights are always going to have, while an enemy unit is within 12, they have to take a battleshock test with -1, and from turn 3 onwards they're going to have the +1 to wound and minuses to hit from the enemy unit if it is indeed battleshock, because those are baked into the army rules. They're there, we're not losing them for Chaos Knight players. But it'd be nice to get a detachment rule which has got nothing to do with battleshock. It'd be nice to have a couple of different looks, like what I'd like to see is a Nurgle based detachment. So say the Nurgle based detachment gets a 6-up feel no pain, awesome. Say the Khorne based detachment gets, just like Reclaim the Realm, add 1 to move, add 1 to advance and charge. Or maybe that should be the Slaanesh one. And then the Khorne one gets +1 attack every time they charge, or +1 to hit if they charge. It'd be nice to get at least 4 detachments built around the 4 Chaos Gods, and then an extra one for Undivided. And maybe the Traitor's Lance detachment rule that we have right now, Forged in Terror, can just be the generic one. So you've got 6. So you've got generic one, Traitor's Lance, you've got Undivided, and then 4 built around the Chaos Gods. That would be awesome. They haven't done that with the Space Marine Codex. So there is a White Scars-ish detachment, but it's not just for White Scars, it's for everyone who wants to run bikes. There's that Vanguard detachment, which is sort of Raven Guard-y, but it's not just for Raven Guards. Anyone can do it if they want to be stealthy and sneaky. They can do the same thing with Chaos Knights as well. It doesn't have to be for Khorne, but it can be corny. There could be one Tzeentch, there could be one Slaanesh, and anyone can play any detachment that they want to. But it'd be nice to get detachments that are disassociated, disconnected with the battleshock thing, because I don't think battleshock is that great. What do you think? Now, having said all that, Chaos Knights definitely do have some epicness. The Knight Abominant is absolutely epic. It forces battleshock tests in your shooting phase, that's not the epic part, but at the end of its movement phase, roll a d6 for every enemy unit within 9 inches of this model, and on a 3+, that enemy unit suffers d3 mortal wounds, and that's really good because that's just turned on all the time. 3 mortal wounds, thank you very much. The Volkite Combuster is strength 12 AP dash. That's not so great, AP dash, but it is devastating wounds with 9 attacks. And the Electro Surge has 9 attacks, and it's got sustained hits, and then it's got the Bale Mace Tail, which has got extra. It's got 12 attacks. It's very, very good at killing hordes, killing elites. The Knight Abominant stands out as well from the Imperial Knights because it's different. They don't have anything exactly like this one. There's ways that you can pimp up Imperial Knights to make them similar to this, but similar isn't the same. The Abominant feels proper chaosy. And having played Imperial Knights, there isn't anything quite like the Abominant. So I like it. I like it. It's a unique knight thing for the bad guys. Another unique thing for the bad guys is the Knight Despoiler. You can load out a Knight Despoiler so it has 2 Gatling guns, 1 on each arm, or 2 battle cannons, 1 on each arm. This is something you can't do with the Imperial Knights at the moment. You used to be able to do it on the Knight Crusader, but now the Knight Crusader comes with a Gatling cannon and a thermal cannon, and you can replace the thermal cannon with a battle cannon, and that's it. So Knight Crusader, Gatling cannon with a battle cannon or thermal cannon. Knight Despoiler for Chaos, pretty much anything you want. This means you can load up a pretty shooty Chaos Knight standing away in the backfield with Panoply of the Cursed Knights. Each time an attack is made against the bearer, subtract 1 from the armor penetration of that attack. So they've got armor contempt, they've got -1 AP all the time, and it's for an attack. It's shooting attack, punchy attack, whatever. A guy at the back with dual Gatling cannons if you mainly play against Horde lists. A guy at the back with 2 battle cannons if you're playing against anything else. It's a party trick that the Chaos Knights used to be able to pull off, and they can still pull it off, and it is pretty glorious. And the other thing that Chaos Knights can do that Imperial Knights can't do all comes down to the baby knights, the Armigers and War Dogs. Imperial Knight Armigers, well, everyone can take autocannons, but the punchy ones. The punchy Imperial Knight Armigers can take the Reaper Chainswords. And Reaper Chainswords have got 2 types of attack, the sweep attack, the strike attack. But they don't get above strength 10 minus 3 damage on the strike attack. So strength 10 minus 3 damage used to be really good. The Reaper Chainsword used to be pretty good at ripping open tanks. But at strength 10 now, when a lot of tanks are toughness 10 or higher, toughness 11, toughness 12, land raiders, things like that, strength 10 minus 3 damage sometimes just bounces off high armored things, high toughness things. The chainsword doesn't do what it used to do. It's still pretty good at killing hordes, it's still pretty good at killing elites, but killing the really big stuff, not so much. The War Dog Carnivore, though, can take a Reaper Chainsword and a Slaughter Claw, and then it gets up to 6 attacks, hitting on 2s. Or you can just take a Slaughter Claw on the Executioner, not on the Executioner, anyone but the Executioner, like the Stalker or anything. The Slaughter Claw on the Chaos Knights is better than the Chainsword, sort of. The Reaper Chainsword has 2 attacks, strike or sweep. So it gives you the option to kill lots of things or one thing. But like I said, the one thing that it kills is typically elites or weak tanks, because if it's trying to kill one thing and it's a big tank with high toughness, it won't. But the Slaughter Claw, well, on the Carnivore, it's got 6 attacks hitting on 2s at strength 12. So then it's wounding land raiders at 4s or anything less than a land raider on 3s. And minus 3 AP, d6 plus 2 damage. And that's 6 attacks hitting on 2s. Strength 12, minus 3, d6 plus 2 attacks. And they reroll charges, Kroot Carnivores. So Carnivores are good. They're cheap, they're fast, they're annoying, and they don't get the 2 types of attacks, but they've got enough attacks as it is. And just sending them up the board, basically I need more of them is what I'm saying. Just sending them up the board, they're going to do well. See, the other thing that happens, if you chuck an Armiger and a War Dog together, or a Knight on a Knight, sometimes they can bounce off each other a little bit. But a Carnivore will wound big Knights on 4s. A Carnivore will wound Armigers on 3s with its many attacks and d6 plus 2 damage. Carnivores are good. So despite the fact that Chaos Knights don't have as good a central army rule as Imperial Knights, there's definitely a lot of flavour in the data sheets. War Dog Carnivores running around all over the place with an OC of 8, great. Knight Abominants doing things that are different to the Imperial Knights, good. Big shooty Knight in the backfield with lots of big shooty stuff guns, good. And more importantly, they just look so good. Imperial Knights look good, but Chaos Knights, they're spiky. They've got skulls for faces. They've got weapons called Slaughter Claws. They've got spikes. Did I mention the spikes? They just look so good. And Imperial Knights and Chaos Knights aren't that bad to paint. I've smashed out my Imperial Knights, as you know, but they were relatively easy to paint. All you need is a spray can of lead belcher. Get that on there for your base layer, silver, and then work your way up from there and you'll be okay. Add colour to the panels. Nuln oil is your friend. At least that's the way I do it. And then I take a look at the Knights painted by Den of Imagination Painting Studios, and I've got no idea how they managed to paint like this. You know when you see paintings that other people have painted and you're like, how did you do? I use a brush, I use paint, I use the same tools that you use, but I have no idea how you do the voodoo that you do so well. I guess that's the difference between someone who really knows how to paint and someone who knows how to cheat paint. Someone who knows all the little tricks and things. Not all of them, but enough to make my armies look okay. I'll leave a link in the video description below to Den of Imagination if any of you want to check them out. They also have a YouTube thing. Check out their YouTube. They're also on the Instagram, so you can check that out as well. In the meantime, Chaos Knights, what do you think of the detachment rule? Is it good? Is it bad? Am I wrong? If you could change it, what would you do? And what other detachments would you like to see for Chaos Knights going forward? Or even Imperial Knights going forward? And I guess that all leads into a deeper discussion, which is, have they got Knights right in this edition? Have they ever got Knights right? I think they did. But are they right in this edition? What do you think? I'm not even going to touch that one. But where are knights right now? Are they? Yes. Yeah. I'll leave that. That's an open question. Anyway, thank you for listening to this video. Hope you enjoyed all the lovely images and stuff. One last shout out to Den of Imagination Painting Studios. And if you'd like to support me, then click that like, subscribe and things. Or also you can become a channel member, which unlocks an extra battle report every single Winter's Wednesday. Anyway, thanks for watching. Happy wargaming.